Why is it that 300 million Americans have basic questions about personal finances? My first big financial question came when the clicker didn't work. The clicker now works. My question is answered. My first question came when I applied to the University of Michigan. And while you might be assuming I was trying to figure out how to pay for tuition, my question was actually much simpler. How do I pay for the $40 application fee? At the time, I didn't have the money, and so I had to borrow $40 from a neighbor that was willing to help me out. By the time I got to my senior year, I couldn't afford a place to stay, so I slept in the back of my car so I could stay in school. And it got me thinking, why does the clicker still not work? It's going to be the theme of the TED Talk. Just kidding. It got me thinking, 1, finances are really tough, and 2, I considered myself lucky. While I was still in school, the economy was collapsing around us, and what we now know was a Great Recession. People were losing their jobs, they were losing their homes, retirement accounts built over decades were shrinking, and savings accounts were vanishing. I really started to think about it, and my question was, why do we not equip people with the ability to learn about personal finances? Why do we not equip people to adapt and change to the economy, which shifts all the time? In school, we teach the chambers of the heart, and yes, biology is important. We spend a great deal of time talking about chemistry, reading Shakespeare, and learning world history, as we should. But if these are deemed of vital importance, would it not stand to reason that a subject that is as ubiquitous as it is essential is not worth teaching to? The average American has $8,000 in credit card debt, which costs over $1,000 in interest each year just to have a piece of plastic in their wallet. When I graduated, our commencement speaker, President Obama, delivered a resounding message of hope, which is now so absent in our country. But he really did. He delivered a message of hope. And while it was inspiring, I was sitting there acutely aware of the fact that I had $4,000 in credit card debt from buying both textbooks and beer throughout college. And I promise it was mostly textbooks. Lest we think this is a millennial issue, with student loan debt topping $1 trillion, financial instability is hurting all Americans, with 76% of us, there's the actual slide, with 76% of us living paycheck to paycheck, and 85% of people admitting that they're financially stressed, anxious, and concerned. We've got a pretty big issue, and yes, ouch, it does hurt. After college, I did AmeriCorps, and I worked at a nonprofit that helped low-income individuals start businesses. And while we were teaching business courses, I quickly realized that they needed personal finances first, since this was foundational to business success. And once we started teaching the personal finance courses, it was like opening the floodgates. People loved being able to ask and get their questions answered, some of which they had for years. Wow. After that, I worked at Google with some of the most brilliant people I've ever met, and what was truly mind-blowing was that in AmeriCorps, the people's questions were the exact same as the people who were getting 4.0s at places like Stanford, Harvard, and the best universities around the world, including, obviously, the University of Michigan. The bottom line is this: that it doesn't matter where you're at on the socioeconomic spectrum, whether you're black, white, low income, high income, no matter who you are, everyone wants to know, am I doing it right? So after all that I'd experienced and gone through, I decided to leave Google and start a company that was dedicated to helping people improve their financial health and wellness so that they could reach their financial goals and dreams. At this point, I've worked with thousands of individuals, companies, and organizations across the country. And tonight, I want to share an idea with you that I think can reshape the way we approach personal finances in America, one that will make our country more equitable and hopefully, and just maybe, make people a little less stressed. It's called financial justice, and financial justice is the equal and fair ability for all individuals in society to pursue a financially independent, secure, and healthy life. We're the richest country in the world, and nearly 70% of us have little mini supercomputers tucked into our pockets, and yet we have a long way to go to weed out the financial injustice that cripples our security and health. I didn't even click that one. Maybe somebody will magically come from the back and give me a new clicker, but until then, we'll talk about the 3 keys to increasing the level of financial justice in our country. Number 1, information. We've got a major information issue that really needs to be addressed. Let me show you what I mean.
Should you put into savings every month? As much as you can. 10% of your paycheck, right?
Isn't it like 20% of every check?
I
Paycheck?
thought it was more like 10.
What's 10? I think it's 10%
What
of your
is
paycheck.
10%?
Yeah. What's a FICO score?
Oh, it stands for Federal Isaac Company, or financial, I don't actually remember.
I don't know, actually. No clue. Yeah, no clue.
It gets me every time. Their chuckles and their nervous laughs barely conceal the fact that they just realize they don't know something really important. Right? When we don't have good information or we have too much of it that isn't easily digestible, it becomes way harder to make good decisions. I've had people break down in tears in front of me because of their financial concerns. And after 30 minutes of just a couple of good pieces of information, they're able to walk away empowered, educated, and able to act. Good information is powerful, and it is truly a key to raising our level of financial justice in our country. Number 2, financial equality. We have to work towards a greater sense of equality in our country. By a quick show of hands, how many of you have heard of the wage gap? Pretty much everyone here. The wage gap results in women making $500,000 less than men over the course of their lifetimes. And it's even more drastic for minorities. Now, here's something you might not have heard of that's lurking right beneath the surface. I call it the expense gap. The expense gap is the difference in expenses that one group faces compared to another. And while there are many examples out there, let's again think about men and women. Women have to buy feminine hygiene products like tampons in decades for their lives, right? And if the couple of people that did not snap, if you're a little squeamish because I just said tampons, wait until you hear this. I've actually calculated that the cost of tampons over the course of a woman's lifetime will add up to another $80,391. It now adds up to $600,000 in lifetime difference that women are set back compared to men. And hopefully by uncovering these areas of inequality, we can start to work towards better solutions. Key number 3, transparency and access. We have to increase the amount of transparency and access in the financial arena so people don't continue to get exploited by financial companies. I'll share a quick story with you. I'll share a longer story with you. Kylie is 35 years old, and she's got a great financial foundation already. She's got no debt, she's got a couple of fantastic kids, and she's well on her way to retirement. But when we looked at her retirement account, we realized that she was getting charged a ridiculously high fee that was going to cost her over $10,000 throughout her life. Now, fortunately, we were able to make a couple of changes real quickly, and so she was able to avoid this. But even the 1% fee, which sounds small but is really high compared to what else is out there, can add up to a lifetime difference in $300,000 in lifetime lost wealth. Let's do another quick poll. How many of you have heard of the term food desert? All right, we got a pretty enlightened crowd here. Nice work. Food deserts are places all over America, that both urban and rural, where it's difficult to access high-quality food. There are also financial deserts all around us that nearly overlap on top of food deserts. And what I mean by this is where you find the Whole Foods, you're going to find the Bank of Americas and the JP Morgans. And where you find the corner stores selling the sugary food and drink is where you're going to find the predatory payday lenders and check cashers that are waiting to exploit the next people that walk through their doors. This lack of access continues to perpetuate the level of financial injustice in our country. So the big question is, what can we do about it? And the obvious answer is we play soccer. When I was growing up, I was the goalie, and at one point I had a really cool t-shirt. It said, last line of defense, first line of offense. And while this mindset served me well on the field, I think it's the analogy that can help us move forward financially. So let's look first at offense. We have to proactively seek information. We can't sit back on our heels and let the world happen to us. We have to look forward. And I would challenge you to go home tonight and start to identify a couple of goals that seem important to you and narrow it down to just one. And I want you to develop a game plan and a strategy on how you think you're going to get there. And it can take months, years, and even decades to reach various financial milestones. But by starting now and being intentional and playing offense, you can start to score one financial goal at a time. Defensively, we have to be defensive consumers. The financial industry is trying to score goals on you by getting you to sign up for and buy their stuff. So how do we play defense? We ask questions. We ask why. When I was a middle school math teacher on the west side of Chicago, and my students would give me an answer, I would ask them why. And then they would give me another answer, and I would ask them why over and over again until they would throw their hands up and say, okay, we get it. Keep asking why. Well, why did the screen go blank? That's a question. So, in sort of conclusion, by taking a stand both defensively and offensively, I believe that we can become more financially healthy, both individually and as a country. And by focusing on these three keys, information, equality, and transparency, I am confident that we can improve. We've got a multi-trillion dollar opportunity to take a stand for financial justice that makes our country more financially healthy, less stressed, and I think it can improve the lives of all Americans. But if we take a stand for nothing, then I think we will fall for everything. Thank you.